Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have our author here joining us today, Susan E Wadds, joining us live on the Zoomcast and podcast. She's the author of What the Living Do from Regal House Publishing. We're excited to talk about her work, let alone the workshop she's doing and the retreats delivered as well. Excited to have her here live today, hailing from, is it Ontario?
That's correct. Yeah, a couple hours north of Toronto.
Beautiful. It's called Seabright, right?
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, it's exciting to have you here. Congratulations on your success on your book. First and foremost, introduce yourself to us if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. Well, I live on this sweet little piece of property in traditional Anishinaabe lands in Williams Treaty Land with a couple of cats and my son and his lovely girlfriend. And I write fiction, poetry, and short stories. Mostly I'm focusing on long form fiction these days. I also work as a body worker, but because of COVID, luckily, it gave me the gift of being able to host online writing workshops. So I went from doing just a couple of workshops a week to doing several. And then, of course, taking people on international retreats last year, and next year will be in Spain, in Andalusia. So yeah, and I've just launched my debut novel, What the Living Do, as you mentioned, and it's been kind of a whirlwind since March when it was released.
And tell us about it.
About What the Living Do?
Yes, of course. Tell us about your work. Excited to hear.
Well, this story is about a 37-year-old woman who, she's 37. She works in roads maintenance, cleaning roadkill and driving snowplow. It's a bit of a flip the script on traditional female roles. Her father and sister died in a house fire when she was only 11. And she's just found out she has colon cancer, or not colon cancer, she has cancer. So that's kind of how we set it up. It sounds very dire, but basically the story is her journey to find out what the living do, how to live joyously in a world that has been shattered for her. And she's quite a tough character. She thinks she's very tough anyway. She's not. She has a younger lover who's very sweet and very supportive that she keeps pushing away. But hopefully by the end, she's going to let him in. But, you'll have to read the book to find out.
This is exciting. And how can we find the book? Where is it? And also, what is your website?
My website is writeyourwayin.ca. You can find links to it there. If you're in the US, you can buy it directly from Regal House Publishing, who published the book. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I always encourage people to go to their local bookseller because I like to support the bricks and mortar. So it's available. It's absolutely available wherever you buy your books. And the lovely thing is it's going to be on audiobook. I was able to choose a narrator. I was given the contract for that, and very, very happily got to choose a wonderful narrator, Mare Trevathan. And she's finished it, but I don't know when it's going to be out, but I hope it will be soon. So that'll be exciting, and it'll be available on lots of platforms.
So have you been busy doing all book signings and book tours? Tell me what your life has been like. This is amazing. By the way, I'm on your Instagram page as well, and I hope people do as well. They could see some of the pictures there. It's a DEEPAMWADDS, right? I'm following the right person, Susan?
Yes. That's me.
All right,
that's me, and that's the book. You'll see lots of stuff about the book and lots about my son, who's a traditional male Indigenous dancer.
Oh my goodness! I see. I didn't know who that was. Oh
yeah, that's my boy. That's my beautiful boy.
Oh, by the way, I have a 7 and 9-year-old, and I have 3 cats. I love cats. So
there we go.
All right, we connect. All right, good. Good. Tell me more. Oh my goodness, I can't watch it now because then you'd hear it in the background, but I'm going to watch it later.
So funny. So the book was launched in March. It came out in March, and I set up a few launches, big launches, locally and in Toronto, which is a couple hours away, at different places where I knew people, and those were the ones where I provided food and an open bar and music and all of that kind of stuff. So that was really fun and big and exciting. Since then, I've been doing smaller events, but mostly at bookstores, or at least with booksellers there to sell the book. And I've been went across Canada, and that's going to continue into October, as far as I know, and maybe more. I've been doing a few interviews and some podcasts, and yeah, it's been waiting so long to have this book published. I finished it in 2016. That it's a hurry up and wait kind of a thing. So now it's after I did my own launches and organized them all, I hired a woman named Holly Gatteray, who is with River Street Writing, as a publicist, and she is on fire. She's been getting me engagements all over the place. So that's been really it's been kind of breathless for me. And it's fun doing a lot of traveling and a lot of talking about the book.
This is exciting. My goodness. And can I just get a little of your background, since, my first time getting to meet you? I don't know. I want to find out more about you, where you're from, and, who inspired you to start writing like this, and who else in the family is doing anything like this?
Well, in the family, as you can see, my son, he's land-based learning coordinator. He's coordinator. He's Ojibwe, and very immersed in the culture. So his creativity is in fishing and dancing for the most part. But as for me, yeah, what got me inspired? Well, I've been writing my entire life. That's always the and really on my own. I'm self-educated, as my protagonist in the story is. So I don't have PhDs or whatever, MFAs. I did it all on my own. And back in I don't know, I think it was 82, I had my first short story accepted for publication in a literary magazine. And but it was about a man in a rock and roll band who was secretly in love with his drummer, who was male. And so when the story got accepted, they said, "We're going to accept your story. There are many stories that are much better written, but yours is au courant." In other words, we're publishing your book because it's current. We don't really like it. So that was my start.
Wow.
Then then life got I had a few poems published back then in the 80s, but my life kind of went in a different direction. I went to India. I spent 4 winters in India learning body work and psychotherapeutic practices, and kind of only wrote sort of spiritual poems, if you will. And then I got married. Then I got married again. Then I had a family. And anyway, that's just shorthand to say things got sidetracked, creatively speaking. And once my marriage broke up and it was just me and my son, and I had time again, I wanted to get back to writing, but I had pretty much lost my confidence. And a lovely friend that I had enlisted she was a coach, a life coach for creatives. I worked with her for a while, and then she pointed me in the direction of the Amherst Writers and Artists method of writing workshop facilitation with a woman named Sue Reynolds. And after my first workshop in the AWA method, I came away, I was actually weeping, because I realized, I can do this. I can do this. It gave me so much confidence and assurance that what I was doing wasn't complete garbage. And so from then on, I dove in and love the method. Now I teach the method, or at least facilitate in the method. It's not really a pedagogical method. It's more of a space and a method to help people write. And then my first nice acceptance for a short story came from Carte Blanche magazine, and it was a story called Choose the Hammock. And that was in 2011, and it's been since then that I've really engaged in the process, in the writing and in the submission process.
Well, congratulations. This is amazing. And I know when you have a family, sometimes things do get sidetracked, right? I think we could all kind of understand that. But
Yeah.
clearly your passion and you're here doing so much with this book. Now let me ask you for What the Living Do, right? What has been, tell me some of the response, some of the testimonials of people reading it. What are they saying?
Well, the sweet thing, it's kind of funny because the Brett Catlin is not your typical heroine. She's very stubborn, very strong-willed, very determined, that she's determined in everything and all of her decisions. And so the feedback that I get is that people want to smack her. I get this a lot. Oh, I was halfway through. I was so frustrated with her. She wouldn't make a decision. She's got cancer. She refuses treatment. What's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? I'm so mad at her. And then the feedback comes that, oh, I get it. And they have a whole lot more compassion for her. So it's very much a character-driven story, although there's absolutely lots of things that happen. But it's really a story about her character and her finding a way basically back to life. So the feedback has been so sweet. But it's often that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth. I had one man say, "Oh, I learned a lot about women reading this book."
Mhm.
And another friend who read it said, I wouldn't choose this book. But, if I didn't know you, I wouldn't choose this book. He said, but now I'm going to buy a whole bunch of copies and give them to all my men friends because they need to understand some things. So I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh my goodness. So what's next for you? I mean, tell me, there's a lot happening. Do you have any more book tours or, all these promotions going on? This is exciting stuff. And as you continue to promote the book, you're also doing these workshops I want to hear about as well.
Yeah, so there are events happening right through till October, as far as I know now. We'll see what happens after that. I have two books on the go, two new ones. One that has had 15 or 16 rewrites, maybe more. It's had many
Wow.
iterations. Um, it's and the reason for that is because it's a story that really hinges on something that happened in my life, but I absolutely didn't want it to be a memoir or about me. It
Mm-hmm.
needed to be fictionalized. And because it was a traumatic event, I needed to find a way to distance myself enough to tell a story that was believable and sympathetic. And so I've tried lots of different ways. I think I've got it now. It's really, really close to being done. That one is called Performance. The other one, working title is The Breath Inside, and it's the one I'm very excited about. I was just telling this other podcaster that the new book is kind of like a new affair. I get
Ooh.
very excited. It's
Mm-hmm.
got
No, I
lots of
get it.
juice.
It's that the adrenaline, the rush, the hormones, the chemicals. Yes.
Yeah, and it's about a woman, a 51-year-old woman who's had a lung and heart transplant from a 25-year-old man. And when I read Claire Sylvia's Change of Heart, where she had this double transplant and really had a very strong sense of the person that had been the donor of her organs. And it's a great memoir. I highly recommend
Wow.
it. But it really got me thinking, well, what if those organs retained their consciousness?
Well, you hear about that, right? I believe in that.
And so they've retained their consciousness and they want out. They're formed beings. The
Yep.
cells have carried their entire personality, and now they're trapped inside a woman's body. So I wanted to look at this, what that would be like. So it's a bit of speculative fiction, as they call it. It'll be told in two timelines, from the donor and from the recipient's point of view, so you hear his voice as well. So that one's very exciting for me.
Oh, that is exciting. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to jump the gun, but you also are doing some retreats This is exciting, right? When are they? Are they any this year still, or are they all for next year? I was reading before on your website.
Yeah, the next year because it's funny because we're going back to the same place. I've been done them in Costa Rica and Italy and Greece, and last year we went to Spain for the first time, and that place was so gorgeous and so perfect.
Hmm.
Just absolutely the most divine place you could imagine, with everything from the food to the everything. Um, was so beautiful that I said, okay, well, we're going to go back because it's amazing. So it's in Andalusia near Malaga.
Okay.
And we went last year for a week. This coming year in 2025, it'll be for 10 days. We, one of the people, and I didn't do one this year because my book was coming out and I knew I would be too busy to take a group anywhere. And but one of the participants from last year said, well, why can't you do one in 2020, in 2024? I said, no, you have to wait, I'm sorry. One thing at a time.
Oh my goodness. So you are keeping busy
So the
for
so the
sure.
retreat goes, yeah, the retreat is very nice. My friend Isana, who's been doing these with me for years now, she leads a very gentle, we call it old lady yoga, even though there are men that come, but we just kind of, it's very, very gentle yin restorative yoga. We do that first thing in the morning. And then after breakfast, we do 3 hours of writing practice. And after lunch, people have free time to go read, write, walk, rest, whatever they like. And then after dinner, we gather for a salon where people can read anything they've come up with that they haven't read during the rest of the retreat. Or what's happened with the salons is that people will bring topics to discuss, like what is art, what is great art, or talk about future projects. So it's a wonderful, very casual kind of get together we have at the end of each evening.
Beautiful. And I also was reading, for your book launch and all, you had the entertainer, what's his name? Richard
Oh, Richard
Scrimger.
Scrimger. Oh my God, he's so great. He's been fantastic. He did two of them, the first two, and he's going to be in Guelph with me a few hours away. And he's a writing teacher. We have it's such a funny story because I worked in the restaurant business for many years, fine dining, and I was the maitre d'. And I had one of the waiters was Richard Scrimger way back when in the 80s. And we were both writers, both aspiring writers. Well, he took off. He's writes young adult, um, wonderfully entertaining and still very deep books. Many of them he's written. And it was funny because I was driving my son when he was young to school one day, and the local radio station had him on, and I hadn't heard from him in years. And they were interviewing Richard Scrimger, and I'm like, well, how many can there be? Who's a writer? So anyway, when I wanted to do this, put these launches together, I contacted him to ask if he would MC for me, and he was delighted to do it. So when he introduces me, he said, well, Susan was my boss for many years, so when she tells me to do something, I just do it.
Hmm.
So so yeah, he's very entertaining when he hosts. He's just delightful and brings out the best in me and in the audience. So yeah, I'm very
Beautiful. Well,
grateful.
being it's our first time here together on this podcast, what else about your book? You as an author, did you want to share, with your viewers today?
Well, years ago, I heard a man named, of course, it goes right out of my head. Oh, Robert
Oh,
Wiersma
camera fell.
say, "Oops, where'd you go?"
I know, camera fell. Oh, it happens. Sorry. You there?
It's
Good, good.
okay. He's had a whole workshop, but one of the things he said just really stuck with me, and he said, "Don't flinch, don't flinch." And another writing instructor, a wonderful woman named Barbara Turner Veselago, who wrote a book called Writing Without a Parachute. She does something called free fall writing. And it's the same kind of thing. She really encourages us to go fearward, write what you don't want to write, and don't back away from the hard stuff. So, and I'm not talking about horror, right? I mean, you can write horror if you want to, but
Yeah.
as a dedicated writer, even if it is horror, don't flinch about telling the truth, I think is really what I'm trying to say. And I think that's really important because, you can write pretty, but if you're going to write pretty, write true as well, not just pretty. That makes
Mhm.
sense.
No, it does. And this is like, let me just ask, I mean, who do you who do you credit yourself to, becoming such a writer? Do you have some favorites, some favorite mentors, writers, or, what would you say? And in your downtime, what are you doing? Always writing
Downtime?
and
What's
reading?
that? Well, I will have to say that I owe pretty much my entire writing life to this woman, Sue Reynolds. She teaches the AWA method. She has been my mentor, my friend, my guide, ever since I met her in 2009. So first and foremost, Sue. She's also a beautiful writer as well as she's an amazing facilitator. Barbara Turner Veselago, also amazing writer, but fantastic facilitator. Donna Morrissey, beautiful writer, was my mentor at Humber School for Writers. Yeah, the list goes on, on and on. Alyssa York, who wrote Fauna, and her latest one is Far Cry. She didn't know me from anybody. I bumped into her a couple of times at various events, writerly events. And from the moment I met her, she talked to me like I was her friend, and she is an exquisite writer. And I took one of the things that you have to do when you're trying to get a book published is you have to ask for blurbs from known writers. And it's advised you start high at the ones that are impossible, but the ones that you admire, the ones that maybe write a little bit like you, or you aspire to write like them. And I wrote her and I said, would you consider reading my book and blurbing it? And without hesitation. And she wrote the most beautiful, I think it's right here on the right here on the cover. I mean, it was just so lovely. She's
Oh,
written a fierce and fearless novel about a woman drawn to self-destruction yet desperate to live and maybe even love. A deeply moving and memorable debut. Like that. And she didn't really know me, but it was just so lovely. And I have to say that the people who did the blurbs for me, I am so indebted to them. Some fabulous writers. I have to read you my favorite one though. I mean, my favorite just
sure.
because it's so clever.
Absolutely. Please.
So John Gould was a Giller finalist. I don't know if you know these
I've heard
awards.
of him. Yes.
Yeah, the Giller is like the big award in Canada. It's
Hmm.
yeah. Anyway, he's very funny writer, very clever. Also writes about death and stuff. Anyway, so he writes. I can't go, says Brett, the life-size protagonist of this absorbing debut novel, and I can't stay. With trenchant insight and agile prose, Susan Wadds conjures a woman snagged on the horns of the most fundamental of human dilemmas. If neither life nor death will have you, what then? Stick around. Just
Yay.
isn't that fun?
Beautiful.
I love
No, it
that.
really is. My goodness. And in closing today, since we're just about out of time, how did you want to leave off with everyone about why they should buy your book, read it?
People like it, even men like it, even though it's a woman's book. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I think that's the biggest surprise for me about What the Living Do is that men really enjoy it and feel, and I think particularly because there are a couple of male characters in it that are really lovely. Um, they're not pushovers, but they're real deep, loving human beings and very, I don't know. And I think it surprises people because when you find out that Brett has a younger lover, you think, oh, he's going to be a jerk, and he's so not a jerk. So that's maybe that's why men like the book, because the men are portrayed. I mean, there is a bad guy for sure. Don't get me wrong, there's a bad guy,
Oh, a little
but
sneak peek. All right. And Susan, how can we find the book and how do we contact you?
uh, I met Susan at writeyourwayin.ca, just the way it sounds, writeyourwayin.ca. And the website is writeyourwayin.ca, and you'll find all the information there.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Pleasure having you here. Excited to get to know you and looking forward to the next as well.
Oh, thank you
And
so
hopefully we'll
much,
connect
Jill.
again soon. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us today. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, thank you. It was nice meeting
Bye-bye.
you.
You too.
Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.